A few years ago, an aircraft I worked on flew for the first time. It was a huge moment, and yet, when we later tried to rebuild the exact same aircraft on the other side, we couldn't do it reliably. Drawings were there, the files were on the shared drive, nothing was lost, and still we couldn't reproduce it. The gap between the files exists and we can rebuild it on demand is what this entire course is about. And it starts with one idea most teams get wrong: the product lifecycle.
In the swing, digital transformation time.
I am Sergey Arisov. I build audit-grade digital environments for deep tech that has to pass certification: green aviation, nuclear, automotive, or electronics. In this episode, I'll do two things. First, I'll walk through the 6 stages of the product lifecycle. Fast, no jargon. If you've seen lifecycle diagrams before, stay with me, because the second part is where it gets useful. I'll show you why fast-growing startups quietly break the links between those stages, and what it costs them when certification or scale arrives. If you're a founder, you'll leave knowing which decision to protect. If you're a tech lead, you'll leave knowing what to build. First, a reframe. When people hear product lifecycle management, they think of a tool, a piece of software you buy. That's the trap. The lifecycle is not software. It's the path your product takes from an idea to something you manufacture, support, and eventually retire. Software can support that path. It can't create it. If the path isn't clear in how your company actually operates, no tool will save you. So before we talk about any system, let's look at the path itself. Stage 1. Concept and requirements. This is where you decide what the product must do, and just as importantly, how you'll prove it later. In regulated deep tech, a requirement isn't a wish. It's a commitment you'll have to show evidence for. Stage 2. Design. Engineering turns requirements into a concrete solution. The key question here is traceability. Can you connect every design choice back to the requirement that justifies it? Stage 3. Verification and validation. Verification asks, did we build it right? Validation asks, did we build the right thing? This is where evidence is generated, and where teams that treated requirements casually start to suffer. Stage 4. Industrialization. Moving from it works in the lab to we can make it repeatedly. Work instructions, tooling, supply chain. The design has to survive contact with the shop floor. Stage 5. Production. Build orders, kitting, routing, non-conformances. In a regulated context, every build has to be reconstructable. What was made, from what, by whom, against which baseline. Stage 6. In-service and retirement. The product lives, gets maintained, modified, and eventually retired. The life cycle doesn't end at the shipping, and neither does your responsibility for the evidence. This isn't my invention. The canonical reference here is John Stark's work on product lifecycle management. He frames the life cycle as a paradigm for how a product gets released across its whole life, not as a software category. I am standing on that. What I'd add is what happens to this model under real pressure: small teams, fast growth, and auditor at the door. Here's what nobody tells you. Startups rarely fail at the stages. They fail at the links between the stages. Each stage on its own usually works. Engineering designs, shop floor builds, but the handoffs, requirement to design, design to build, build to evidence, those are where the things quietly fall apart. Why does this happen? Because in the early days, the links live in people's heads. One engineer knows why a change was made, one conversation in the hallway approves it, a drawing gets printed with 3 outstanding changes scribbled on it, and the shop floor adjusts on the fly. It flies, it works, everyone celebrates. The problem is invisible until you grow. And then one of 3 things happens. You open a second site and discover the knowledge that lived in those hallway conversations didn't travel. You scale the team, and the people who held the context are now stretched across 10 times the work. Or an auditor arrives for certification and asks you to reconstruct exactly why a change was made, who approved it, and against which baseline. If the links lived in people's heads, you can't answer. That's not an efficiency problem. In a regulated environment, that's a control problem. So here is the decision worth protecting. If you take nothing else from this episode, the links between stages are not bureaucracy you add later. They are the operating system of your company. Treating them as documentation will clean up before the audit is the single most expensive assumption a deep tech startup makes. What's the alternative? You make the links explicit. The intent behind a requirement, the change that modified it, the approval that signed it off, the baseline it belongs to, these stop living in heads and start living as connected records. There is a name for this connected backbone, the digital thread, a continuous trail that runs through every stage so that at any point you can answer, why does this exist, and can we reproduce it? You don't need a huge team or a huge budget to start. You need to decide that links matter and then protect them. That's the tech lead's job, and it's what the next episode is about. Quick recap. The product lifecycle is a path, not a tool. 6 stages from concept to retirement. The stages usually work. The links between them are where the startups break. And those links aren't paperwork. They are your company's operating system and the thing certification will test hardest. In the next episode, I'll show you the digital thread in plain language. How to actually connect those stages without drowning your team in process. If this reframed how you think about your own setup, subscribe so you can catch the rest of the build. And tell me in the comments which thing in your life cycle is currently living in someone's head. Be honest.
In the swing, digital transformation time.